Today, I will introduce measures worth over $48 billion in this resilience budget to deal decisively with the situation at hand. This is over 7 times of the first tranche. Altogether, we are dedicating close to $55 billion to support our people in this battle, amounting to 11% of our GDP. This is a landmark package and a necessary response to a unique situation.
Good evening. It's 5:30 p.m. here in Singapore. You're watching the special edition of The Big Story. I'm Haryanto Diman. Deputy Prime Minister Heng Keat earlier announced the details of the supplementary budget to help Singapore and Singaporeans manage the impact of COVID-19. The $48 billion resilience budget is part of the larger $55 billion package, amounting to 11% of Singapore's GDP. Now, this is to battle the impact of COVID-19. This second budget focuses on 3 key areas. First, to save jobs, support workers and protect livelihoods. Second, to help enterprises overcome immediate challenges. And last, to strengthen our economic and social resilience so we can emerge intact and stronger.
Our immediate priority is to save jobs, support our workers and protect livelihoods. Over 1/3 of the resilience budget is dedicated to this. Even then, we cannot prevent an economic recession, as the external health and economic situations will evolve beyond our control. But it will help us mitigate the extent of the downturn and, more importantly, help save jobs and protect livelihoods.
Joining me today to discuss more on DPM Heng's budget speech are CIMB economist Seng and Associate Editor of the Straits Times, Vikram, Khanna. Welcome, guys. Now, DPM Heng described the severity of the impact brought by COVID-19 as a black swan event that comes only once every few decades now. And to provide for this resilience budget, the government has to tap on our past reserves. In a Facebook post this morning, DPM Heng cautioned about guessing the size of the budget and its reach. Now, he added not to have excessive expectations or merely focus on the headline numbers. If you could start us off, Seng, what do you make of this second budget? Does it address the key areas that need support?
Well, I think Minister Heng was rather modest against the backdrop where the economy is expected to contract by up to 4% this year itself. So as he pointed out, we won't be able to turn the recession around, but all we can do at this point is provide a cushion to the economy as it becomes buffeted from the downside of a global recession itself. As to whether this second package will be sufficient, I think the goal really is about savings jobs itself, hence that 1/3 of the new package is targeted at jobs itself. So hopefully that will work out. Obviously, if things were to worsen beyond this point, that the growth is actually going to be a more significant contraction, then perhaps more will be done. But certainly at this point, it is a substantial lift to the local economy in terms of the overall size of the budget deficit that's being planned for this year.
And Vikram, how long will this budget, you reckon, tide us over for?
Well, first, just to add a little bit to what Seng just said, this is absolutely gigantic. I mean, 11% of GDP, this is equivalent in terms of GDP terms, relative to GDP, to the US $2 trillion package, which is about 10% of GDP. So this is absolutely gigantic. As to how long this will see us through, I think it's not easy to give a simple answer, because first of all, it depends on how the COVID-19 pandemic evolves. I mean, how do countries respond? How badly are countries affected? How badly are supply chains going to be affected? How many cities and even countries are going to be locked down? I mean, all these things are imponderables, so that we don't know. But as far as the measures themselves are concerned, the relief measures are of different duration. So, for example, the centerpiece of the jobs credit scheme, it lasts till January, right? The freezing of fees and charges, government fees and charges, that's for 1 year. but the support for the unemployed is 3 months. The deferment on tax payments is for 3 months. The suspension of late payment charges on mortgage arrears is also for 3 months. And some SME capital reliefs on repayments are for 1 year. So it's quite a mixed bag. So, I mean, it's very hard to sort of give a precise answer as to how long this will see us through. It also depends on how companies respond. I mean, how do they respond to the reliefs they are getting? I mean, do they succeed in holding on to their employees, or will we still see layoffs? I mean, all these are imponderables, but I think this is a huge cushion, which is of course needed, and I mean, it'll see us through for quite a while.
Right. Now, Vikram, of course, to help Singaporeans stay employed, DPM Heng also said that the jobs support scheme introduced during the first Unity budget will be enhanced and extended.
Yep.
For every local worker in employment, I will raise the government's co-funding of wages from 8 to 25%. Firms in the food services sector will receive higher support at 50% of wages. And firms in the aviation and tourism sectors, which are the most badly affected sectors, will be supported at 75% of wages.
DPM Heng also added that the monthly qualifying wage ceiling will be raised from $3,600 to $4,600. Now, he revealed with these enhancements, a total of $15.1 billion will be allocated to support more than 1.9 million local employees under the Jobs Support Scheme. This is more than twice the level of support provided during the global financial crisis. Vikram, which of these measures introduced you reckon will be most helpful to workers?
I think, of course, the most helpful of all is the Jobs Credit Scheme. This will enable workers to remain employed, provided, of course, that companies follow through and actually keep them employed. So I think this is the single most helpful piece of it. I think you also have things like more hiring by the public sector. You also have cash payments which have been tripled, under the care and support package. You also have traineeships, support for traineeships for students and things like that, which will also support workers, basically. So I think there's a whole slew of measures, but above all, it is the job support package which has to do the heavy lifting. That is the thing that will really support the workers of Singapore.
Right. Now, Seng, on the part of employers, is this what employers were hoping for?
Well, I hope so. I think to carry on from what Vikram said earlier on the job side, we must remember this is a global recession now. Singapore's small open economy depends very much on our global demand for our goods and services. That side, because of travel restriction, lockdown, is now significantly affected. Tourism sector, for instance. So we really now depend on our small labor market here to keep consumption going itself, on the government to keep spending, to keep growth going itself. So it's extremely important, just to reiterate Vikram's point, that we need to ensure that the local labor force stays as employed as long as possible and job creation continue to come through. Because the moment we have job losses here and we have a fall in external demand, the drag on the overall economy will be quite substantial. So essentially, for all employer here, large and small, across all industries, is really about trying to retain as many of their worker as long as possible. And for those who can hire, this is where the incentive to encourage them to hire comes in as well. So not just about saving jobs, but equally important, creating jobs in an environment where the recession condition outside of Singapore will be pretty severe. I mean, Singapore itself talk about worst case maybe contraction of 4% this year. Bank of Thailand yesterday said the contraction for the Thai economy could be on the order of -5%, for instance, and we're just going to see that being repeated around the region. So it's going to be a very large drag on our economy because of the collapse in external demand.
Right. Interesting you brought that up, Seng. Now, I just want to go back to Vikram's point earlier on where you mentioned regarding retention and laying off workers. Now, DPM Heng mentioned that the onus is now on employers to retain their workers. Do you foresee more scrutiny on employers to retain their workers?
Yes, I mean, I hope so. I mean, DPM Heng mentioned that he, after providing these benefits to companies, he urges companies to retain workers, but there's no requirement for them to do so. I think I wish that there could have been a stronger statement that they will be required to retain the workers, and if they do not retain, if they just take the subsidies and fire workers, I think the subsidy should stop. I mean that sort of thing. So I mean, it should be more conditional than just urging them. So I mean, I think there could have been a stronger statement in that area.
Now, two of the sectors hardest hit by the impact of COVID-19 are aviation and tourism. DPM Heng also outlined the support that will be extended to these sectors.
The Changi Air Hub is an important pillar of our economy. The hub and its adjacent industries contribute over 5% of Singapore's GDP and employ approximately 192,000 people. It makes us an ideal global Asia node where companies all over the world can access opportunities in Asia and companies in Asia can access opportunities around the world. For every local worker in employment, I will provide a total of 75% wage offsets for the first $4,600 of monthly wages. This will be paid in the same months as the main jobs support scheme payouts. This enhancement will cost the government more than $400 million. In addition, I will set aside $90 million to help the tourism industry rebound strongly when the time is right.
On top of that, DPM Heng also introduced a $350 million enhanced aviation support package. This is to fund measures such as rebates on landing and parking charges and rental relief for airlines, ground handlers and cargo agents. Vikram, how critical it is to provide a sizable support for aviation and tourism sectors?
Well, I think DPM set it out quite clearly. I mean, this is our lifeline to the world. I mean, this is where we get our essential supplies from. I mean, a lot of essential supplies, the fresh foods and things like that, for example. This is also the sector that supports a lot of our exports. For example, semiconductor exports are now shipped out by air. So this is absolutely critical to our economy and to our living, basically. Also, of course, enables people to come in and out easily. I mean, this is also we are an island, and we need connectivity to the world, and aviation provides it. And it's absolutely critical to also maintain SIA, not only in terms of survival, but it must remain robust. So it must not be in a state of collapse when this thing ends. It should be able to sort of do business as usual when things pick up again. So, and of course, it's been hit very badly. I think it was reported recently that SIA salaries, some salaries are going down by 70%. I mean, to take wage cuts by 70%. People can't cope with that. So this kind of support is absolutely essential. As for tourism, yes, I mean, tourism alone provides about 4+% of GDP. But that's, I think, that doesn't take into account the multiplier effects. I mean, there's also, I'm not sure what exactly is included in tourism, but you have F&B, you have retail, then tourists also get around on transport. So all these sectors would also be affected if tourism is affected. So I think it's absolutely essential to support that sector too, and that's also a frontline sector.
I think we can see, and it's quite undeniable, that these two sectors are critical and they've been badly hit as well. Seng Woon, if I could ask, how long you reckon these sectors need to recover, seeing they are the hardest hit?
Well, again, to put a dollar value on what Vikram was talking about earlier, last year tourism receipt or tourism revenue, it amounts to something like $27 billion itself. Now it just basically disappeared because of the travel restriction itself. So obviously significant help has to be given out to all those parties involved, because you suddenly have zero revenue growth for no fault of theirs as well. So at this point, really is essentially trying to see when this outbreak would peak, when will the healthcare crisis itself be resolved, and obviously for us to rebound, it is really about whether the confidence and to travel again, whether it's for work and for business, come back. So how long it is really depends. So obviously at this juncture, we are trying to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best itself, which is why we've got Minister Heng saying that if we need to, if the economic contraction were to be worse than expected itself, again, further drawdown on past reserve will be called upon if needed to as well. So on that sense itself, if more need to be done, more will be done.
Now, we can see, of course, a lot of efforts on the part of Singapore, to really help our economy, boost our economy, and to make sure that we can manage the impact of this COVID-19. But Seng Woon, if you could just comment as well, how much of our recovery is reliant on the rest of the world getting its act together as well?
Very much. I mean, again, we are a small, open economy where trade in goods and services is 3 times the size of our GDP. We are only 5.7 million people itself now without the tourists traveling for work or for leisure itself. So we really need global growth to rebound before we can essentially ride along that recovery. The plus side of being so integrated into the world is that when we have a global upswing, we will benefit substantially. The flip side, obviously, is that when we have a significant deterioration in external environment, we will feel the downside also magnified many times as well.
Now, beyond the aviation and tourism sectors, others that involve a high level of human interaction will also take a hit following the recently announced safe distancing measures. DPM Heng noted that the food services as one such sector, as more Singaporeans avoid crowds and choose to stay at home. Now, the jobs support scheme for F&B firms will be enhanced by providing a total of 50% wage offset for the first $4,600 of monthly wages. On the private hire car services front, support will be given through extending and enhancing the point-to-point support package, which will cost an additional $95 million. Eligible taxi hirers and private hire car drivers will continue to receive the special relief fund payments of $300 for each vehicle for each month until end September. To help private bus owners, a 1-year road tax rebate and a 6-month waiver of parking charges at government-managed parking facilities will be provided. This will cost $23 million. Another key area that DPM Heng addressed in his speech was extending help to our households.
First, I will enhance the care and support package announced in the Unity budget. I will triple the cash handout for all adult Singaporeans from the earlier announced range of $100 to $300 to a range of $300 to $900, depending on income. I will provide additional help for families with young children. I will triple the additional cash payouts given to each Singaporean parent with at least one young Singaporean child from $100 to $300. For lower wage workers, the enhanced workfare special payments I mentioned earlier will provide them $3,000 in cash this year for their household needs.
DPM Heng added to further help needy Singaporeans with their daily expenses, the grocery vouchers will be tripled this year from $100 to $300. Together with the $100 which will be given out next year, needy Singaporeans will receive a total of $400 in grocery vouchers for this year and next. Seng Woon, on paper, the triple increases look significant. In real terms, how much of a boost is this?
Well, we have to look at the whole package in totality itself. To what extent jobs can be saved, to what extent new jobs can be created, and obviously third side is whether you put money in the hand of consumers here. Remember our earlier discussion, the external demand now has collapsed. So we are really depending on our own over here. So morale is extremely important. If morale can be supported by these packages, that have been rolled out over the last a couple of months itself, then it will provide some degree of support to the economy, minimize the impact of the economic damage to the economy, and then essentially we can at least say that we cushion the downside itself. So the morale side is extremely important, I think, which is why we've got Minister Heng so essentially taking up the big bazooka to try to reassure a Singaporean that help's coming and more will be done if needed to. And if so, continue to get on in your daily life with whatever spending that you can itself, although there are downside pressure on the economy itself. So morale is very important at the end of the day for the economy.
So when I noticed you mentioned morale quite a bit, it's interesting that you brought that up. Vikram, if you could just round up our discussion today, is this financial vaccine is the one that we need to boost morale?
Well, it'll definitely go a long way towards doing that. But I just want to add to something Seng said. This is not an aggregate demand boost. This is not a response to a regular business cycle recession. This is different. I mean, a lot of the household support, for example, is basically designed for basic needs. I mean, you just meet your basic needs, your groceries and things like that. I think the real challenge here is to save companies, to make sure companies survive through this whole period. And if companies survive, jobs will survive. And that's how we will get through this. So I think that's the biggest part of the story, the survival of companies and the survival of jobs.
Well, thank you so much, Vikram and Seng, for your invaluable insights to the budget speech that DPM Heng just announced earlier. Now, for more on this resilience budget, do log on to straitstimes.com. Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.